Hello students and welcome to the video session of class 10th science chapter 2 life process. This is the sixth video of this lesson. Let us see what we are going to learn today in the video. So the learning targets are the human heart, the structure of the human heart, functioning of the human heart, double circulation, blood pressure, lymphatic system and the functions of the lymph. So let's get started with the human heart. Human heart is a hollow and a muscular organ of size of our clenched fist. As you can see in the diagram here that the size of the heart is like a clenched fist. Clenched fist means muthi. Okay, and this heart is a muscular organ. That means it is made up of muscles and it is hollow from inside. Okay, the function of the heart is to continuously pump the blood to various parts of the body, as we have water motors in our homes to pump the water. So the same function is the heart doing in our body. It only pumps the blood with a great pressure so that the blood can reach to each and every cell of our body. Okay. Then its average weight is 300 grams in males, and in females the weight is 250 grams. The color of the heart is reddish brown in color and the shape is conical shape. Location of the heart is between the two lungs in the thoracic cavity. Heart is present in between left lung and right lung. Okay. Now this heart is surrounded by two layered sac. There is two membranes present outside the heart, and in between those two membranes there is space present, and that space is called pericardial space, and it is filled with of liquid, and that liquid which is present in between the two layers is called the pericardial fluid. And the function of this liquid which is present in between the two layers is to reduce the friction between the walls of the heart. Okay, it prevents the heart from friction with the other internal organs also. Okay, so this is the general information about the human heart. Let's move on to the next slide and see the structure of the human heart. Okay. A very beautiful diagram is seen on the slide here. Now the heart, this is the internal structure which is seen. So the heart is divided into two halves. Okay, you can see here that the heart is divided into two parts. This side, this is the left part, and this side, this is the right part of the heart. Now each half consists of two communicating chambers. Each half again has two chambers. Okay, one is upper chamber and the lower one is lower chamber. On the right side also you can see the upper chamber and the lower chamber. So there are two upper chambers and two lower chambers. So these upper ones means the left upper and the right upper. Both of them are called the auricles, or you can say atrium. And the both lower chambers are called, that is one left and one right. So both of them are called the ventricles. Fine. Means upper two are called atrium and the lower two are called ventricles. One is left atrium and left ventricle, and the other one is right atrium and right ventricle. Fine. Now in between the left atrium and left ventricle there is a valve present. You can see here in the diagram there is a valve present, and you can see here this valve has two halves. Okay, so the name of this valve is bicuspid valve. Okay, and if you see here in between the right atrium and the right ventricles also a valve present, but it has three flaps here. Fine, so it is called as tricuspid valve. Okay, I hope this is clear to you all, that the valve present between the left atrium and left ventricle is bicuspid valve, and the valve present between the right atrium and right ventricle is tricuspid valve. Now, next question arises, what is the function of these valves? So these valves provide one-way passage for the blood. Blood cannot return back. Like once the blood enters from left atrium to left ventricle, it cannot return back. So they allow only the one-way passage of the blood. Now the walls of the heart, they are composed of special muscle cells which are called the cardiac muscle fibers. Okay, the walls, as the walls of the heart are muscular, so they are made up of muscle cells, and those muscle cells are called the cardiac muscle fibers. The word cardiac refers to heart. Okay, now let's see the functioning of the heart, how the heart functions. Now, the most vital function of the heart is heartbeat. We all know that the heart, when pumps the blood, it gives a beat, heartbeats. We can measure the heartbeats also. Okay, so the sequence of events which takes place during the completion of one heartbeat is called the cardiac cycle. Means how many events, the sequence of events which occur in one heartbeat, it's referred as cardiac cycle. That is called cardiac cycle. Now within that nanosecond, a sequence of events takes place. Okay, and those sequence of events which are taking place in the completion of one heartbeat is called the cardiac cycle. Okay, now this cardiac cycle involves repeated rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles. Because heart is made up of muscles and the muscle cells can contract and relax, so in the heartbeat there is repeated rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles. Contraction is called systole. Systole means contraction, and relaxation is called diastole. Here we will use these words again and again, systole and diastole. So systole means contraction and diastole means relaxation. Now the cardiac cycle involves the following. Let's see what is the cardiac cycle. Means in one heartbeat which events are taking place, what is happening in the heart actually, fine. So the first is joint diastole. Now diastole means what? Relaxation. The muscle cells are relaxing now. Now joint diastole means all the chambers of the heart will relax at the same time. So it is called joint diastole. Let's see what happens in the joint diastole. Now during the time when the muscles of all the four chambers of the heart are relaxed. Okay, so what happens first? All the four chambers, the two atrium and the two ventricles, they get relaxed. Relaxed means they will expand. And when they will expand, naturally the volume inside the heart will increase and the pressure will decrease. Okay, so volume will increase, and because of the increase in volume, the deoxygenated blood enters the right atrium by the large vein vena cava. Okay, this you have to remember, that the right side of the heart always receives the deoxygenated blood, right, and the left side of the heart always receives the oxygenated blood, right. Now at the same time, now what is happening when the four chambers are relaxing? Deoxygenated blood enters the right atrium by a large vein which is called the vena cava. Means vena cava is bringing the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium. At the same time, the pulmonary vein, which is the exception. Okay, pulmonary vein, all the veins are carrying deoxygenated blood, but this pulmonary vein will carry oxygenated blood. So this pulmonary vein from the lungs pours the oxygenated blood into the left atrium. So simultaneously, when the right atrium receives deoxygenated blood, at the same time the left atrium will receive oxygenated blood by the pulmonary vein which is coming from the lungs. Okay, so the oxygenated blood now enters the left atrium. Okay, now let's see the next steps with the help of the diagram here. So first see at the diagram, this is the left atrium labeled here, this one is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, and this is the left ventricle. Okay, so what I have said, in the joint diastole, what happened, all the four chambers are relaxing now, and this right atrium will receive, you can see here a large vein here, this is called superior vena cava. This is bringing the deoxygenated blood and pouring in the right atrium, this side, and this side the left atrium receives the oxygenated blood from the pulmonary vein. This pulmonary vein will bring the oxygenated blood and will pour it into left atrium, and both the types of blood are coming simultaneously in the heart. Okay, this happens in the joint diastole, means both the atriums are filled with blood now. Okay, left one with oxygenated blood and right atrium with deoxygenated blood. And always remember that this side is left and this side is right. Don't get confused. This is the heart of the person who is standing in front of you. So if your right side is this side, so you will face the left side of the person standing in front of you. That's why here is always left you will mark, and this side you will always mark as right. Okay. Now the next step in the cardiac cycle is the arterial systole. Systole means contraction. Fine. Now I said that both the atrium are filled with blood. So in the next step, what will happen? Now both the atrium after receiving the blood will contract. Systole means they will contract. So when they will contract, what will happen? Pressure will increase, and pressure will increase. So this will allow the valves to open. Because of the pressure, here the bicuspid valve and here the tricuspid valve will get open. And when they will open, this left atrium will pour all the blood in the left ventricle, and the right atrium will pour all the blood in the right ventricle. Fine. So now where is the blood? After the contraction of the atriums, both the atriums, now the deoxygenated blood is in right ventricle and oxygenated blood is in left ventricle. Okay. Now the third step is then ventricular systole. After atrial systole, after the contraction of the atrium, now the ventricles will also contract. Now the blood is in ventricles, both the ventricles, and now they will also contract, means systole. So almost immediately the ventricles contract. Immediately after the contraction of the atrium, blood comes in the ventricles and the ventricles also contract. Now during this contraction, what will happen? Where this deoxygenated blood will go now? The deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle flows to the lungs through pulmonary artery. You can see here, this is the pulmonary artery, blue colored. Okay, this is the exception. All the arteries carry oxygenated blood, but this one will carry deoxygenated blood. So from here, the blood will enter to this blue colored pulmonary artery. And where this pulmonary artery will carry the blood? Now this pulmonary artery, because this is deoxygenated blood, so where this blood has to go? So this blood has to go to lungs for purification. Purification means CO2 will be released outside and the blood will absorb the oxygen again in the lungs. So this pulmonary artery will carry the deoxygenated blood to the lungs for purification. Fine. And when this left ventricle will contract, the blood will enter the aorta. You can see here this red one, bigger one, artery, which is called aorta. Okay, so this aorta will carry the oxygenated blood because this blood is oxygenated. So where it has to go? It has to go to all the cells of the body so that the food can be born and energy can be released. Fine. So students, don't get confused. Oxygenated means the blood which is rich in oxygen, and deoxygenated means which is rich in CO2. Okay. So when the ventricles will contract, deoxygenated blood will go to lungs for purification, and the oxygenated blood will go to all the body cells with the help of the aorta vessel. Okay, I hope this is clear to you all. Now let's move on to the again picturization of the cardiac cycle. You can see here that blood is entering. This is arterial systole. Arteries are contracting, so blood is coming into the ventricles. Then ventricles will contract here, ventricular contraction, and then the blood will enter the aorta and the pulmonary artery, and then again what will happen? The blood will enter in the atriums here and again in the ventricles, then again they will contract, and in this way the blood is pumped to the different places of the body. Okay, now let's see what is double circulation. Okay, why we are calling it as double circulation? Double circulation because in one cardiac cycle the blood is coming twice in the heart, one in the form of oxygenated form and the other in deoxygenated form. So in one cardiac cycle, blood comes twice in the heart, and that's why it is called double circulation. This could be explained with the help of this diagram here. So the blood circulation in human heart is double circulation. Fine. This means that the blood passes through the heart twice for each circuit of the body. Fine. One circulation involves the entry of blood from all the body parts into the heart. So again, let me explain you with the help of this diagram here. You can see here this the human body. Okay, so in all the cells, oxygen burning of the food occurs, energy is released. Fine. And now what is happening? See, After the burning of the food, now CO2 is produced. So this deoxygenated blood or CO2 carrying blood will go. This blue color is deoxygenated blood and red color is oxygenated blood. So from all the cells of the body, this vena cava, okay, this vena cava will carry the deoxygenated blood and will pour it into right atrium. Okay. Now from right atrium to the blood goes to the right ventricle, and from right ventricle it goes, see, just follow the path of the blue one. So from the right ventricle it moves on to the lungs with the help of pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery is the exception which carries the deoxygenated blood. Now this blood reaches to the lungs. Now in the lungs what will happen? It will release the CO2 and will absorb O2. Once it absorbs O2, it becomes oxygenated. Okay, so from the lungs now, pulmonary vein, which is again the exception and carries oxygenated blood, will bring the blood to the left atrium. From left atrium, it moves to the left ventricle. From left ventricle, with the help of aorta tube, it is now distributed to all the parts of the body. Again, so the blood reaches now all the parts of the body. Fine. Again, respiration will occur, food is burned, CO2 is released, then again vena cava will collect all the deoxygenated blood and takes it to the heart. Then from the heart again it is pumped to the lungs for purification. Then again here in lungs purification will occur and the blood again comes to heart. Then again the heart pumps it to all the body parts. Fine. So you can see here that in one cardiac cycle the blood comes twice in the heart and hence it is called the double circulation. Okay. So I hope it is clear. Now let's move on to the next concept, that is blood pressure. Okay, so blood is the important liquid. Blood is the connective tissue also that flows in the blood vessels and it helps in the transportation of various materials. Now when the blood flows in the vessels, it exerts some force on the walls of the vessels. Okay, because it's a fluid, so it will exert pressure on the walls of the vessels. And this force exerted by the blood on the walls of the vessels is called the blood pressure. Fine. Now, I have written it in short here BP. BP means blood pressure. So blood pressure can be measured with the help of an instrument which is called sphygmomanometer. Sphygmomanometer is the instrument which is used to measure the BP. Now BP is much more in arteries than in veins. This is the thing to remember, that blood vessels are of three types we have studied, that arteries, veins and capillaries. So where is the blood pressure more, in arteries or in veins? So the answer is in arteries, because arteries carry the blood from heart to all the body parts. So heart is pumping the blood forcefully in the arteries so that it reaches to all the cells of the body. Hence, the pressure is more in arteries. And whenever we measure the BP, we always measure the BP from the arteries, not from the veins. Okay? So blood pressure is also of two types now. One is systolic pressure and the other one is diastolic pressure. Systolic means when the ventricles contract and diastole means when the ventricles relax. Okay. So systolic pressure, how we'll define? It is the pressure of the blood inside the artery. Remember, we are measuring only the pressure of arteries. So it is the pressure of the blood inside the arteries during ventricular contraction. When the ventricles contract, that time the pressure measured in the arteries is called the systolic pressure. And the diastolic pressure is pressure of the blood inside the arteries during ventricular relaxation. When the ventricles relax, at that time, what is the pressure in the arteries? That is called diastolic pressure. Okay. Now let me discuss the normal range of the systolic and diastolic pressure. So the normal systolic pressure, that is the upper range of the BP, is 120 millimeter mm of mercury. Fine. Hg is mercury, measured with mercury, so it is mm of mercury is the unit. And the normal diastolic pressure, that is the lower range of the BP, is 80 mm of Hg. So what is the normal BP range now? From 80 to 120. More than 120, then it is high BP. You can see here in the diagram also. See, the ideal one is between 90 to 120. This is the ideal blood pressure. Below 90, it is in the low category. Okay. And above 140, you can see here it is labeled with red color. That is high blood pressure. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So what we can see on the screen here now? Two figures are given here, two instruments are shown here, and both of them are sphygmomanometer. Yes, you guessed correctly. Both of them are sphygmomanometer, the instrument which is used to measure the BP. Okay, this is the manual one which the doctors use generally, but nowadays at home you can see this type of instrument, which is the digital one, which everyone can use to measure the BP, as the readings can come on the screen here. Right now, this is all about the blood vascular system. Right? We studied the types of vessels, then the structure of the human heart, functioning of the human heart, then the double circulation also. Now, the another type of circulatory system present in our body is the lymphatic system. Okay, so in the lymphatic system, you can see here that these nodes and these small capillaries which you are seeing, that is all a part of lymphatic system. Okay, so let's now discuss what is the lymphatic system. Now you can see here again, this red color is the arteries, this blue color here is the veins, and in between you can see the capillaries here. Fine, for the exchange of the materials we have capillaries. Now in between the capillaries you can see some green color tubules which are also present, and these one are called the lymph capillaries. Okay, these are the lymph capillaries, and here you can see some of the cells. Okay, now what more you can see, the tissue fluid you can see which is flowing in the lymph capillaries here. Then lymph capillaries combine together to form the lymphatic vessels. Okay, this is the diagram. Now let us again try to understand what is the lymphatic system. So lymphatic system is the second important circulatory system, and that permeates the entire human body and transports the liquid called lymph from body tissue to the blood vascular system. Okay, so in the lymphatic system, what things are present? So what are present in the lymphatic system? Lymph is present, lymph capillaries are present, lymph vessels are present, and lymph nodes are present. Okay, so let us first understand what is lymph. So in the previous diagram which you have seen, this yellow colored tissue fluid which is flowing here, okay, this is the lymph. Okay, so from where it is coming, let us try and find out. Lymph is a light yellow colored fluid which filters out from the blood capillaries into the intercellular spaces. Students, see, when the blood flows in the arteries, it has to face a lot of pressure, and due to this pressure, when the blood reaches the capillaries, some of the blood filters out from the thin walls of the capillaries. Okay, because of the pressure, when the blood reaches to the capillary areas, as capillaries have very thin walls, so some of the part of the blood filters out from the blood capillaries and get collected in between the cells. In between the cells, that is in the intercellular spaces. Okay, and that light yellow colored fluid which get collected in between the cells is called the lymph. Okay, now what comes out from the capillaries? So from the blood, plasma filters out, then some of the WBC cells also filters out, some proteins also filter out and get collected in between the spaces of the cells, and this light yellow colored fluid which comes out is called the lymph. Now where does this lymph will go now? Now it is a part of blood, and how it has to be again combined with the blood. If daily this much fluid will come out of the blood, then in some day the body will get shortage of the blood. Okay, so this part of the blood which has filtered out from the capillaries has to be again combined with the blood so that there will be no loss of blood from the body. Okay, so what does the lymph contain? Lymph contain the plasma and some of the WBCs which are then called lymphocyte cells. Okay, now let's move on to the next diagram and see. Here you have again the same diagram, and let us try to find out now. So in between these intercellular spaces, the tissue fluid or the lymph get collected. Lymph is also called the tissue fluid. Okay, now you can see here the lymph capillaries. These lymph capillaries will collect the lymph, or the lymph will flow in the lymph capillaries. But how does this happen? So in the diagram here you can see that the lymph capillaries or the lymph vessels, they are made up of small cells. Okay. Now lymph which is collected outside will exert pressure on these cells, fine, And when the lymph will exert pressure, so what will happen? Cells will get displaced, and you can see the arrow here. The cells get apart, and there will be a little hole here. And from this space, then the lymph enters the vessels. Okay. Now, when it enters inside, now it will exert pressure from inside. And when it exerts pressure for inside, the cell get closed again. And then it starts flowing in the lymph vessels. Okay. So from the lymph capillaries, the lymph will move on to the lymph vessels. Capillaries will combine together and make a lymph vessel. Okay. And then the lymph start flowing in this. And it is very important to remove this fluid from the cells. Otherwise, the part of the body where it gets collected will get swollen up. Okay. So now let's see in the next slide. Now the lymph is also called the extracellular fluid. Okay. It is also called extracellular fluid as it is present outside the cells. Now this lymph flows only in one direction. Why only in one direction? Because now this lymph has to be collected from the tissue areas, and again it has to be combined with the blood, and it does not go in the arteries. So where it has to be collected back? This lymph has to again go to the veins. So veins, they are collecting and going to the heart. So this lymph also flows in one direction only, that is from body cells to the heart. It only flows from the body cells towards the heart. So it is a unidirectional flow of the lymph. So it flows from tissues to the heart because the backflow is prevented by valves. Lymph capillaries, lymph vessels, they all have valves present in them so that the lymph cannot go back. Okay. Then what are lymph capillaries? They are the thin walled, highly permeable tubes. They drains the tissue fluid drains into the capillaries, and these capillaries join to form the lymph vessels. Now lymph vessels, they are formed by joining of lymph capillaries, and they finally join the vein system. Where the lymph vessels will join now? Lymph vessels will join the veins of the body so that this part which is filtered out can be joined again with the blood so that there will be no blood loss. Now the next important topic is lymph nodes. What are lymph nodes? So in the diagram you have seen, let me show you the diagram on the next one. So this is the lymphatic system. So here you can see some node like structures, these swollen parts. These are called the lymph nodes. Now what are they? So these lymph nodes are the cells collected at one place. The WBC is collected at one place. Okay, the mass or the tissues collected at one place, and at these places majority of the WBC cells are present, lymphocyte cells are present, and these lymphocytes will fight with the bacteria or any other germs if enters. Okay, so these are the lymph nodes. So lymph nodes are the masses of the tissues. Lymphocytes accumulate in the lymph nodes where they produce antibodies and act as a part of the immune system. So how they are a part of immune system? Because lymphocytes present in the node areas, they fight with the germs, fight with the bacteria, so they are increasing the immune system. Okay, they remove the bacteria and or any other foreign particle from the lymph. Fine. So this is how the lymphatic system looks like, and these are the lymph nodes. Okay. Now let us discuss the functions of the lymphatic system. So what the lymphatic system is doing, the extracellular fluid or the lymph which filters out from the blood capillaries. So lymphatic system is draining that fluid from extracellular spaces back into the blood. Okay? So it is joining the part of the blood which is filtered outside again into the blood. Otherwise, the blood loss has to be faced by the body. Now it carries carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste. When it flows in the lymph vessels and lymph capillaries, what it does, it carry along with it the CO2 present or any kind of waste which is found nearby the tissues. So it drains that also. It protects the body by killing the germs. Lymphocyte cells will fight with the germs and will protect the body. So this is also one of the function. Then it passes the proteins and digested fats to the tissues. Right? When it moves or when it drains off, it passes the proteins and fats to the tissues which come in the way or the passage. Okay, so this is the function of the lymph. Fine. If the this extracellular fluid is not removed from the tissue area, then what will happen? It gets accumulated there, and the body part or the organ which will get swelled up. It will swell up and it will pain. Okay, so hence this removal of the extracellular fluid from the tissue area is very important, and that is performed. This function of removal of the extracellular fluid from the tissue area is done by the lymphatic system, and that yellow colored fluid which get filtered out from the blood capillaries is known as the lymph. Fine, and it has a lot of function here which we have discussed. Fine. Now this diagram is also of the lymph node. You can see here the lymph capillaries, lymph vessels also, and this is the lymph node area where the lymphocyte cells fight with the germs. Okay, I hope this is clear to you all. Let's have a recap what we have done today. So we discussed about human heart, its structure and functioning, then double circulation, blood pressure, lymphatic system, and the functions of the lymph. Okay, questions may come. Differentiate between blood and lymph. So lymph is nothing but a part of blood which gets filtered out from the blood capillaries. And some more differences you can write: color of the blood, color of the lymph, then how much proteins present there. Okay, there in blood WBC are present, and here lymphocyte cells are present. Like that, difference points can be written out. Okay, so that's all for today. Okay, hope you all are at home. Stay home and stay safe.